started. Stephen, you wanna?
Yeah, they're looking for the window. This is the SIG Release bi-weekly meetings for October 3rd, 2022. And very light agenda, actually, for today. So there was over last week, there were Sandeep was actually asking where is he supposed to check in the code. So that actually kind of serviced up, and I look around our repo, and it's very difficult for him to patch something into on top of John's or something like that, because this John's stuff is actually the topmost of all directories, unless we shift them and change them. So there was suggestions in the general Slack, saying that we should create a POCs Nephio-POCs repo, where because we're expecting a lot of POCs coming in. One way would be creating a repo for all of them, but then again, I guess they're not all readable, writable things. And then, or we can create a single Git repo, and then people who has different POCs can create different directories under, and then we can also move the readmes over those directories as we go. So I told Sandeep that I was going to do that. So if there's any objection, I guess, from the community, for me to create a Nephio-POCs repo, and then Sandeep and others, me too, actually, I have POC code to check into, can basically just tap onto that repo. So that repo would not be, I guess, if you will, protected by anything other than the regular pull request. We don't put like CI/CDs and things over there in POCs. It also isn't. I don't think we have a firm guidelines of what is the basic requirements of checking in something to Nephio code base yet. But then obviously unit test is a requirement, the basic requirement. But then for POC Git repos, for POC repos, we probably relax that requirement too.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, we'll talk about it Wednesday, but I'm gonna propose the pieces I think we need to start building right away.
Yeah.
And I hope to send that proposal today, or given my meeting schedule, maybe tomorrow, so people have time to look at it before Wednesday's meeting. But at that point, we should start creating repositories for real stuff.
Yeah. So we have a Nephio repo under Nephio. So that one I would imagine is for official stuff.
Yeah. So the question is like, I think we'll see, and we can have this discussion on Wednesday. But like some of the things we might put in their own repos, right? Or the question is like if you look at Kubernetes, right? It started as a giant mono repo, which is easy for certain things, and early on is easy, and maybe we should just do that because it's easy. But then later it was like, oh my God, this is a disaster because it's a giant mono repo, and they started spinning things out into other little repos, and it's been a substantial amount of work to manage all of that. So.
No, I mean it's also I would imagine even it would still be a disaster if every single controller and every single things that we do is a different repo. It's also probably pretty difficult to manage.
Well, difficult, but the advantage is, I imagine that once we start working and engineers really start contributing and improving the code, where we're no longer at the level of a POC, right? Where we're actually working on true Nephio components. Probably engineers will pick which component they want to work on. So there will be maybe mini teams around each of these components. So it would definitely be easier for them to have independent repos rather than having all the work mashed together. But that might be looking a bit ahead. I think if we're talking about POCs, well, obviously every POC could just be its own.
Well, POC is easier, simpler. Just pack them onto one for now. But then, so John is suggesting. I don't think TSC approved yet. I actually missed about 40 minutes of the TSC meeting last Thursday. They're suggesting an alpha release in November. That obviously coincides with our talk in ONIS. So if that's the case, we are probably start thinking about what is going to be official. What artifacts are we delivering for November? And then if we are going to have many different repos, what kind of things are we actually delivering afterward?
Well, the next automation meeting will be talking about the components themselves. And if we reach some sort of alignment, at least an initial alignment, that could be used as the structure, right? That gives us the repo structure, I think, already. But we're not quite there yet. And honestly, John, I think a release in November, even an alpha release, seems very ambitious to me.
It is very ambitious, but it's going to require the team here that's been working on things to get it out to open source, right? There's pieces there. I don't know. I need to demo something, right? And we want to do a workshop where people can get their hands on it. And
I'd like to suggest maybe instead of planning for a release, we plan for a demo. And the demo can be a combination of POCs, but really showing some components and working together, because release scares me a little bit, because people might add their own judgments over, okay, so this is what Nephio is doing, where we're not quite sure about where all the pieces are.
Well, let's talk about it on Wednesday. We're talking about a V1 in Q1, right? End of Q1, say. If we can't deliver an early alpha in Q4, we're kind of no chance of making any V1. And so, it may be crap, but it may do some very small thing. At some point, we just have to commit and do something, and then adjust later, and or we'll never get anywhere.
Go ahead, Vish.
Yeah, I mean, I know, John, we need something, and I'm trying to mix both your and Tal's points, right? Do we have any sort of a project manager that can be assigned to this? The reason being, when somebody, I want to be positive too, right? But who can actually say, hey, these are the assumptions these guys are making, and this needs to be validated, and this is a timeline, For example, as simple as what tools needs to be available out there if people start contributing, right? There needs to be some checklist that we should actually be ticking off, or saying, oh, I think we have a problem here. I don't think we'll be able to check this off, and get that, sense of where we stand, That's one thing.
Somebody here internally to see if he wants to jump in, and because I agree, we need that. So we have a technical program manager, we call him, who I've asked about that, but I don't know if he's he's already got many things on his plate. So
Okay.
we'll see. And if he can't do it, I'm going to keep looking. Obviously, it's something anybody in the community can do. But the idea would be, we've got a bunch of deliverables to track. And I think that I'm going to try to lay out some sort of milestones proposal that we can talk about on Wednesday. But again, I'm only working from the idea of I only have access to certain resources. I can ask for help from everybody here, and we can come to a point where we can commit. But my proposal is going to be based upon the resources I have access to, and that's about it, right? And then we can. So maybe it's probably too aggressive. It's my my inherent nature to be far too aggressive on these things, unfortunately. So on the one hand, I have a desire to under-promise and over-deliver, but somehow.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, regardless, right? For November,
Sure.
what we commit is we have something that users can touch. It's not just a demo. It's something where 50 people would download and play around. So it's not. Is it crab? It probably will be crab, but then it's not a. It's definitely not something for production. Nowhere close to that.
Anyway, Vim's got a.
Yeah, Vim. Yeah, go ahead, Vim. Sorry.
Yeah, see, for me, what I wanted to raise is we need to agree on a scope somehow what we want to achieve, because that will clarify a lot what we want to do, right? And maybe we have to make it very contained,
That's
right?
what
Or, I don't know. Yeah, so
propose.
I think for me it all depends on the scope, and I think if we can say, okay, this is the scope we want to do, then we probably can say, okay, who is able to contribute on that and who can work on it. But for me, that's, I think, the starting point of the whole thing.
Yep, and that's exactly what I'm planning to propose over the next couple of days with these two documents. Is the scope, the sort of, here are the pieces we need to build. Here's the scope of a V1, Alpha 1 at least, if not of a V1 like later. And we're sort of working, and we're not talking about release stuff here, I guess, but we're sort of working on that's what I was trying to say in the last call, since everybody here I think was on the last call too. I was trying to say, like, we don't have enough time, like, unless we want to push our first release till mid or third quarter next year, we don't have enough time to like skew this where we are waiting for the exact scope from the other SIG network architecture. So kind of do these things in parallel and try to converge at some point is the idea. And so let me get this out the door over the next day or two, and then you can all beat me up on Wednesday about it.
So the scope for whatever we're gonna give to people will be decided by SIG2.
Thanks for being kind,
for sure.
John.
Whether we answered Steve's original question about POCs, I think the answer is yes, I believe. Go ahead and create the POCs.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. And then
that'll do.
One the question I had was I asked in the chat too. So instead of POC and POCs, I was thinking that we can retire POC and move the README to the POCs root folder, so that we can only one repo for all the POCs, including the README.
Yeah, you could just take the Nephio POC and that I have there and just use that repository and just create some directories under it and move some stuff around. I don't care.
Okay.
So we could release according to just what we have, right? Rather than define the scope to get there, just what people are contributing right now. I mean, I've been working on this topic for a long time. In the components that I'm going to suggest on our automation SIG meeting, I'm suggesting 4 primary components for Nephio, 3 of which I have POCs on. Now, they're not part of the Nephio POC list, but I have no problem cloning them there and putting them there. The question is if the community as a whole will want them to be there and want them to be included, right? I don't want to suppose that, my work is what everybody will want. So it's possible, right? If the goal is to release as much as we can, I have quite a lot that I can actually contribute to a release.
I think that's helpful, but we also want to tell a coherent narrative, right? So
Exactly.
it's a bunch of pieces that were developed independently, unless we can stitch them together in a coherent narrative, that's a challenge. Like when we demo something, we've promised a pre-release demo, whatever that means. The little POC demo I did, is not a real demo because it's not even a complete set of code, right? It's like a happy sunny day 0 generation without any reconciliation. Like what we do in a demo, to me, should be, or rather an Alpha 1 release should be at least self-contained in that sense of has more completeness, but maybe smaller, a very narrow scope. So I think that's great. Let's talk about it on like Wednesday.
Yeah.
We need to have extra meetings. We can have extra meetings. Like we need to make a decision on a target real quickly. And all of this, as we've talked about multiple times, is rough drafts. And we may decide a month in, we release the alpha and we decide to totally change what's in V1 based on what the different SIGs think. And we don't scrap it maybe, but we completely redirect it, but it would affect schedule. And so like it's just classic planning.
Yeah. Right. But I can easily see, the components I worked of just to demo it to the rest of the team would take an hour each.
Yeah,
but
sure.
we can do that. We can definitely put more meetings in and dissect things and create a narrative. I do think I have a narrative out of everything, but we need to create that narrative together, right?
Yeah, and if that matches with what the Nephio principles that Kaushik and Sana were talking, the value prop, if you can tie that up, explain, some of you probably understand that, but I think that elaboration of that will be good. That way, it sticks. Oh, okay, this is what they're trying to do from a Nephio perspective. This is the value prop of Nephio, rather than saying, oh, that's already out there somewhere else.
Right.
So,
Go ahead, Ravi.
Yeah, no, I think pretty much echoing all the comments that are being stated. But I think Sana talked about a few things. One is coming up with a status code document, and from that, basically saying that okay, there's all these other parallel forums, and we are trying to solve something a lot more compelling for the operators. That would be that should be covered, and from there, it kind of evolve into, hey, this is the architecture we are going to kind of solve this challenging problem that we stated earlier, and from there come with some idea of the workflow, what would be the different components and how you basically or you can call it use cases or whatnot, and then basically as an implementation saying that, hey, this is ABCs of this particular use case that we are trying to address. So I think having that at least 3, 4, or 5 pager document will put everybody in the same page for sure. So I think hopefully we'll come to that. I think when you say drafts and all this, I'm hopefully that's going to be the end goal, where there'll be one document that can capture this release one kind of realization, right, from the status code to the realization.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So along these lines, Stephen, and sticking to this theme of SIG release, so if we actually, or when we actually start, all contributing to an actual repository that's going to become actual real Nephio components and artifacts pretty soon, we're going to need the things you mentioned earlier of CI, CD, and we don't necessarily need them day one, right? But we're going to need them pretty quick. And we're going to need some release tooling and infrastructure, even if that's just a script that spits out a bunch of packages or something.
Right.
So
I'm exploring, as I said on TSC meeting, I'm exploring installing Prow.
Okay.
And then hoping to get it done today, but before meeting, but I wasn't able to. So hopefully get it done at some point. I'll let the community know.
Okay.
And then everyone should take a look at what it does. Your /approve /LGTM type things on the workflow when you do a pull request, and then we have webhooks to hook up for your pre-submits, and then pre-submit tests are obviously contributed by you guys when you're contributing to the code base. So I hope to get that done at some point soon.
Awesome. Okay.
Beyond that, and so those things get approved and then get pushed to the repo. In terms of release build and things like that, I haven't looked into anything yet.
So if you want to talk to, if you're looking at Prow, Nabarun from the Kubernetes community is somebody I can connect you to.
Yeah. I'm guessing it's from Google too, because the whole Prow tool, the whole Prow script seems to be very GKE, GCP.
Well, because it was originally developed by Googlers, right? It's open source.
Mhm.
But Nabarun, I thought it was with VMware. Let me see.
Oh, okay.
Well, it does have other users.
Oh no, it has a lot of users. It's just that the
Yeah.
the README for installations and things seems to be, oh, let's use GKE, let's use gcloud commands and things like that. So
Yeah, but
wow.
I've installed it at some point. It was a while ago, but I found it can run on vanilla Kubernetes. There's
Yeah. So that's the point. So that there is a alternative, but then it was very tightly coupled. I mean, no, not tightly coupled, but it was some of the scripts that they do. They assume gcloud and things.
Yeah, he's at VMware. Nabarun
Okay.
Pal. He's at VMware. He was release manager for Kubernetes for a cycle or two. Release lead rather. So, and he did a presentation in Valencia on using Prow in other open source projects than Kubernetes. So like Telsing. So, he
it's being used in OpenShift for one thing. So I'm sure.
Good. Can I raise a question related to this?
Okay.
We didn't discuss this. We talked about Git repos, but we didn't discuss where we're going to upload our images. Whether it's going to be a public
that's
like
a good
Docker
question.
Hub, and we probably want to create an organization for Nephio where all the our container images.
Is there something from Linux Foundations? Does anyone know, or is it something that we can create from Nephio side?
So we should ask Kurt if there's I don't think they have anything, but they might. Maybe Tina knows. I don't know. Do they have a place?
Do you know, Tina?
Linux Foundation have a tool for a container registry you can use? Sorry. No, we cannot hear you.
No, yeah.
I kind of doubt they do because
Me too.
it's rather trivial. There's Quay from Red Hat and Docker, and they're free for use for open source projects, and they're publicly available. So it's just like we're using GitHub. I don't think it should be a problem to use one of these public services.
So I, for whatever reason, Kubernetes doesn't use Docker Hub. And we've used GCR. It's cost like it's been expensive. Google's donated all the money for it, but they actually are just cutting over now. Or they've taken the time. It's been a pretty difficult process to cut over, such that, for example, all the AWS Kubernetes artifacts that are for EKS are not hosted on GCR, but rather are hosted on the AWS. I mean, they were hosted there, but like, I think they've managed to now like work the sort of sharding of the registry such that things get delivered more locally rather than across the world as egress costs. So it is long term a concern. Short term, if Docker Hub will.
John, for me, Docker Hub is a bit of just sorry to chime in, but Docker Hub has the rate limiters kick in very quickly.
Yeah,
so there's.
Okay.
So it's and they act very quick. So my experience with them is not so good unless you pay. I have to pay.
Right.
It's not a lot, but
so we have a Google Cloud organization for Nephio that Google's funding as part of Linux Foundation funding. What CNCF does is Google Cloud gives credits to CNCF, which then uses that to pay for things like GCR and GKE and infrastructure pieces. So we can talk to Kandan. Kandan's the one with the purse strings. It's his it's coming out of his product management organization for the fund for Nephio. And see, he can give some money, but we have to understand how much it's going to cost, right? If it's, I mean, obviously Kubernetes is like dramatically different scale, but it's literally, 7 figures, right? What kind of money we're talking about? That's not something we're You
Yeah,
know,
even running Prow, I need a Kubernetes clusters that runs.
that's easy. That's cheap. You can just run one right there in the
Nephio project.
Nephio project. Yeah, you could just create a GCP. Yeah, just create a GKE one there. But long run, it's going to need, you know, if we're successful and this grows and lots of people are using it, then the costs are going to go up, and we're going to need to deal with that.
So I also added, I'm live adding items to the agenda. But another thing we never talked about, and this is something probably for the TSC, but this SIG could probably advise, which open source license are we going to standardize on?
Oh, it's Apache 2.
For Apache v2, right?
Oh, it has been decided? Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's me and John's been writing code with that.
Yeah, me too.
It's actually in the charter or something. Yeah,
because that's the Kubernetes license, so that works too for the ecosystem. I think that's what most people pick.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a reasonable license, so
it's the most friendly license.
Yeah, it's okay. This one for us.
But we do have to get a CLA set up. So Kurt brought this up in the TSC call that Linux Foundation has a easy CLA tool. We should get that integrated, because that's going to be whatever our CLA. If there's a standard Linux Foundation networking one, I think we should personally we should go with that. The TSC really has to approve what the CLA is. It's not up to us. But like, I think that before people can contribute is going to be something we need. So I would ask, I guess, that it gets on the agenda for this group to get the tooling set up for CI/CD, including CLA checks, which means integrating the CLA.
Right.
And yeah,
that's on Prow. That's a hook. So that's
cool.
Be okay. Yeah. But then yeah, I'll have to go with Kirk to see what kind of what is that hook talking to? Yeah.
And I can also hook you up with folks in the Kubernetes community that hook that up. So Bob Kill and Mr. Bobby Tables on Slack, Kubernetes Slack, could also help you. And he's here at Google. He's
okay.
in the Expo group. So he could help you get if there's any issues. He's
okay.
So any other topics?
Yeah. Anything else? So I'll get the repo organized soon, and I'll let Sandeep know so he can check in the code. Pull request free to go right now. There's no CI/CD pipeline to execute. And then for your POC, anyone who's interested, they can check in first if they want to before your demo. So far, I guess only John and I are the committers, right?
So far, that was nice. Okay, well, if nobody else has anything to say, I appreciate a break in my back-to-back schedule today.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're going to stop recording, or do you want me to?
I'll stop. Either way, I'll stop it. That's fine.
Okay. Then I'll drop.